highlighting history of suburban Sydney with the St Peter's Cooks River History Group.
Our aim is to preserve and promote local history.
We are based at St Peter's in Sydney's inner west.
The suburbs of Hunters Hill and Woolwich occupy a peninsula between the Parramatta and Cove rivers.
In 1835, a family of cabinet makers, the Clarks, were granted land on the eastern end of the peninsula. They built several houses, including Viewforth, which was replaced by a stone house, then a two-storey house, Woodstock, which still stands, the oldest existing house in the Woolwich-Hunters Hill area.
Mary Reeby's property, Fig Tree Farm, was named after a Port Jackson fig. There were 3 buildings on the farm, a convict-built house and 2 workers' cottages built in 1836. The property was leased by artist Joseph Fowles and subsequent tenants until Didier Joubert purchased it in 1847. The 2 cottages were made into one house by the addition of a 2-storey stone wing and paved veranda, today Fig Tree House.
A subdivision of 74 allotments named Woolwich, after the dock area of London, was advertised in 1841. It was promoted for proximity to the city and health in the breeze. The allotments are varied in size to suit either the magnificent villa or the humble cottage.
Shortly after the land was advertised, the Sydney Gazette reported the district of Hunters Hill was infested with bushrangers. In February the following year, armed robbers went on a rampage in the area, plundering the property of both Mary Reeby and William Clark.
Quarrying of local sandstone commenced in the 1840s.
A number of immigrants from Europe influenced the development of the area.
The French connection with Hunters Hill commenced when Didier Joubert, a Sydney wine and spirit merchant, settled there in 1847. He purchased Mary Reeby's Fig Tree Farm. With his brother Jules, subdivisions were laid out and sandstone villas erected.
2 of the most notable Joubert homes were Passy, built for and occupied by Monsieur Sentis, the French Consul General, and Mukubula in Alexander Street. Mukubula, the Aboriginal name for the area, means meeting of 2 waters. It is also the name of an annual festival held at Hunters Hill.
In 1854, Leonard Etienne Bordier imported 4 prefabricated timber houses. They were erected in the Ferry Street area and advertised as 4 splendid family residences standing in their own grounds of about 1 acre each, with wood and water in abundance. Today only one remains, the chalet in Yelton Avenue. Bordier established a wharf at the end of Ferry Street, which became the suburb's first commercial gateway.
Charles Edward Generay settled in Hunters Hill in 1857. He purchased land, subdivided it and financed the construction of stone houses. The Generays first lived in Somerville in Ferry Street, one of the prefabricated timber houses imported by Bordier. In 1858, Generay built Cambridge and Lincote, in which he lived. He acquired 11 acres of land in the 1870s and built Wyballina, where the family lived with their 11 children.
In 1855-56, immigrants from Italy and Italian-speaking areas of Switzerland came to Sydney. Those who settled in Hunters Hill worked as stonemasons, constructing houses, public buildings and boundary walls.
Irish immigrants also came to Hunters Hill in the 1850s. They worked in the quarries and on the construction of roads, walls and wharves.
Felix Cullen bought the Mount Leitrim estate, subdivided it and built houses for sale or rent. He built a large brick boarding house known as the Gladstone. This became the Gladstone Hotel. It was converted into units in the 1970s. Today, still standing on the corner of Mount and Alexandra Streets.
John Cuneo migrated to Australia from Genoa and became a prominent businessman in Hunters Hill. During 1861-62, he built the suburb's first hotel, the Garibaldi, with a classical Italian sculpture in a niche above the door. The building still stands on the corner of Alexandra and Ferry Streets.
The first public school established in Hunters Hill was in Fig Tree Chapel, paid for by the public subscription on land donated by Didier Joubert. It was built in 1857 as a schoolhouse and chapel on the corner of Church and Joubert Streets. In 1962, the building was relocated to allow for expressway construction and became St Mark's Anglican Church.
Hunters Hill Public School was built and opened in 1870.
The municipality of Hunters Hill was proclaimed in 1861, the smallest local government area in New South Wales.
The town hall, completed in 1866, was enlarged in 1903 and 1938. It was almost destroyed by fire in 1978. The rebuilt town hall preserved most of the original facade.
Councillors campaigned for bridges to be built over the Lane Cove and Parramatta rivers. The first Gladesville Bridge over the Parramatta River was completed in 1881. The Fig Tree Bridge over the Lane Cove River in 1885. A new Fig Tree Bridge opened in 1963.
The Maris fathers are responsible for building two churches: Holy Name of Mary Church, Villa Maria, the principal church in Mary Street, and St Peter Chanel Church in Fortuna Street.
The foundation stone of Villa Maria Church was laid in 1867. The church was opened in 1871. A marble altar installed in 1890.
St Peter Chanel Church, built between 1890 and 1901, was supported by the early Irish community. It was named in memory of St Peter Chanel, a French Maris missionary, who was killed by natives on the Pacific island of Fortuna.
In 1872, James Fairfax and friends donated £200 to purchase land for the erection of a congregational church in Alexandra Street. The manse was built in 1886, today converted into apartments.
St Joseph's College began in a temporary wooden building in 1876. 8 years later, 3 sandstone buildings were constructed. The main gates on Ryde Road originally stood in front of Sydney Town Hall. The surrounding streets are named after apostles.
The Fig Tree Hotel, built in 1880, was demolished in the 1930s to make way for the present Hunters Hill Hotel.
The 1882 Illustrated Guide to Sydney stated, "The village is so clothed and hidden by forest and garden that we are surprised on hearing that it contains 12 miles of road, 3 churches, fine municipal chambers, 2 hotels, a population exceeding 1,000, and house property valued at £200,000. The village centre is prettily situated on a plateau between the 2 rivers. The gardens around are laid out in excellent taste, and the main avenue is widely planted with ornamental trees."
The area's greatest advantage was the waterways on either side.
The Jouberts operated a ferry service on the Lane Cove side and Generet on the Parramatta side. The council expanded the ferry services. By 1886 there were at least 13 wharves in the municipality.
One of the oldest wharves was situated on the Parramatta River at the bottom of Ferry Street. It was adjacent to a coal loader used by the ferries. Prior to its closure, the wharf was used by employees travelling to Cockatoo Island dockyard.
Hunters Hill was a popular place for picnics. Ferries would convey parties to Seymour's Pleasure Gardens, where All Saints Church now stands, the Fern Bay Pleasure Gardens, now the site of the Pulpit Point Estate, and the Avenue Pleasure Gardens, the land now occupied by the high school.
In 1884, Seymour's Pleasure Gardens were purchased for the construction of All Saints Church. The building was dedicated in 1888. 50 years after the opening of the church, an extra bay was added to the nave, forming an entrance porch together with a bellcote.
The Atlas Engineering Company was established on Clark's Point in 1884. One of Clark's houses was used as an office and new workshops were erected. A floating dock was imported from England. Areas of foreshore land were reclaimed and slipways created on the southern side. Maudstock and Engineering Company purchased the site in 1898. 85,000 cubic metres of sandstone were excavated to construct a new dry dock, which officially opened in 1901.
Woolwich Dock's busiest times were during the two world wars. Passenger vessels were converted to armed troop ships and repairs were carried out on damaged ships. The company closed in 1958.
The site was purchased by the Army for its water-based transport operations. It used the dock for launching craft and the workshops for repairs and maintenance. In 1997, the Army relocated to Townsville.
Today, Woolwich Dock and adjoining parklands known as the Goat Paddock and Horse Paddock are public land. A maritime village includes boat maintenance facilities, a multifunctional restaurant, cafe and function centre.
In 1895, Colonial Oil of Australia bought Genera's Fern Bay Pleasure Gardens and established an oil storage depot. It was expanded when taken over by Mobil Oil. In 1988, Mobil vacated the site and a residential estate was developed.
The Sydney smelting works were on the foreshore below Kelly's Bush. They produced tin from 1896 until 1968. Kelly's Bush Park is partly on the former site of the smelting works.
Woolwich Pier Hotel was built in 1890 on land owned by George Fesque, a wine merchant from France and leading developer of Woolwich. It was patronised by dock workers living in the vicinity and sailors from ships in dock.
Woolwich Congregational Church was purchased by All Saints in 1899 for a mission church. It was declared independent of All Saints and a new building, known as St John's, erected in 1908. The old timber building became the church hall. From 1978, the Hunters Hill Theatre was located there. It was destroyed by fire in 1993. The theatre then occupied the deconsecrated St John's Church until the building was sold in 2016.
Woolwich Public School opened in 1893. A flagpole was erected in 1910 to display a flag from the original Woolwich Dockyard district near London. Children from Cockatoo and Goat Islands came by ferry and walked to the school from the Margaret Street Wharf. The school closed in 1988 and was converted to an aged care facility.
When Woolwich Bars opened in 1907, there was a diving tower and a turnstile to charge admission.
In the early 20th century, workers employed in industries at Woolwich lived in attached cottages. Alfred Street working-class cottages were distinct from the grander lifestyle of the Hill.
A radium and uranium refinery operated from 1911 till 1915. The concentrated ore was transported from Radium Hill in South Australia. The site of the radium processing plant has been remediated and the area is now residential.
The 20th century saw low-density residential development and the growth and eventual decline of waterside industries and neglect of many 19th century buildings. Didier Joubert's residence at Marlow and Mary Reeby's cottage were demolished in 1961 for an expressway to be built over the Lane Cove and Parramatta rivers.
In December 1965, Tarban Creek Bridge formed a missing link between the existing Gladesville and Fig Tree bridges.
Community groups have fought to preserve the character of the area.
Residents, irate at the demolition of historic buildings and the prospect of high-density development, met at the Hunters Hill Town Hall. They established the Hunters Hill Trust. Their candidates were elected in the municipal elections. The demolition of historic buildings and the spread of home units was halted.
In 1983, the battlers for Kelly's Bush won their long struggle when the New South Wales government bought the bushland from A.V. Jennings and made it a permanent public reserve.
The campaign waged by Crush concerned residents under siege in Hunters Hill, prevented high-rise development of the Mobil Oil site at Pulpit Point.
When Hunters Hill was under threat of amalgamation with the municipality of Ryde in 2003, residents and the council united and gained a victory.
Today, much of the historic built environment remains. Detached houses and gardens have survived.
Passy, erected between 1855 and 56 for French consul Louis-Francois Centres. The facade was altered in the 1970s.
The Haven, built in 1858 by Jules Joubert.
Vienna, originally named Karam Karam, is now a museum, built in 1871 by German shoemaker John Hellman.
Marica, on Ryde Road, was built during 1904.
Lindcote and Stanley Street, also known as Windermere, was built by Charles Generay.
Cambridge, the second of Generay's houses, was built in 1858 and called Fernbank.
Wyballina was erected by Generay in 1874 as the family home.
Sinclair, in Wyballina Road, described as a 12-room stone house with 1 acre of garden, built by Charles Generay in 1879.
In Crescent Street,
Millthorpe, built during 1872 by Richard Sim. The building was given a Federation-style appearance after remodelling around 1900.
Hestock, designed by Walter Liberty Vernon for Alfred Christian Garrick in 1885.
Gomea, built by Charles Edward Generay in 1894, remained in family ownership until 1923.
By 1861, Louis Lasby's, a stonemason, was living in Vine Cottage, now called St Ives.
Wilton Bank and Brayburn were built in 1906 as a pair of mirror houses in the Federation style.
In Madeline Street,
Chiara, domestic architecture of the 1880s, built into the hillside with a rear balcony.
Clevedon, Antonio Bondietti, stonemason, built the house in the 1860s. After the house fell into disrepair, it was almost entirely rebuilt.
Mile was built in 1866 by Bondietti.
Braemar, the earliest that this timber cottage can be identified, is in the Sands Directory of 1897.
Wyaldra, 2 cottages joined together. Their oldest section is a 1-room stone cottage. It was joined to a 4-room stone cottage by an L-shaped stone addition in 1978.
Postievo, originally a 1-room stone cottage, was enlarged using wood and brick.
Genoa, built in 1875 for Elijah Green, a grocer.
19 and 22 Madeline Street are also of note.
The Peninsula Heritage Conservation Zone has resulted in many homes retaining their original character. Over 500 places are listed as worthy of preservation.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel. It's free. And check out our website, stpeterscooksriverhistory.wordpress.com. Visit us the first Saturday of every month from 1:30 to 4:30 at 187 Princess Highway, St Peters.